Welcome to Navigating Disruption. I'm Shaquille Barmel, and I'm the CEO of Ocean Blue Strategic and partner with the Summit Group. I'm a coach, a consultant, and a speaker, and I help individuals, teams, and leaders navigate disruption with competence, confidence, and character. In the Navigating Disruption podcast, I share insights and interviews with interesting leaders that are making impact in the face of uncertainty. So this year marks the 20th year since I graduated from business school. And this normally would be a homecoming year and would be gathering together with our fellow classmates in London, Ontario, just to reconnect and re-engage with the school. We're all looking forward to it. But of course, that is not going to happen this year. And there are some virtual events happening that allow us to re-engage with the school, but it just won't be the same. So I've decided that this year I am going to record a few episodes with former classmates that I haven't seen in the last 20 years as a way of commemorating this special year. Shortly after we graduated in 2000, the U.S. experienced the 9/11 attacks, the dot-com bubble burst. Then in 2008, we experienced the global financial crisis. And the years since, there have been significant advances in technology that have spawned numerous startups, transformed customer experiences, and sparked digital transformations in most large companies. The emphasis on social justice has also shifted leaders' priorities and attention. The focus on diversity and inclusion, gender equality, the Me Too movement, Black Lives Matter, and LGBTQ movements have been positive, but have required changes in almost every aspect of the way organizations work. The last 20 years have been filled with disruption, and our class has been in the middle of it and leading some of it. And now there is a pandemic and the unprecedented and uncertain shift in our lives going forward. So in these episodes, I will have brief interviews with my classmates, members of the MBA 2000 class at Ivey, to answer the question of looking back on the last 20 years, what lessons do you draw that will help us in the next 20 years? I hope you enjoy these interviews. In this first interview, I speak to Christina Chung. I can still picture her sitting across from me in our U-shaped amphitheater classroom at the Ivey Business School building. And I remember her as being very quiet, very calm, perhaps a little shy, but always warm with a smile. Christina, over the last 20 years, has risen through the ranks and is now the Chief Financial Officer of the Procon group of companies, a prominent service provider in mine development and construction. She has had a great career since leaving Ivey, but I'm not going to go into details now. You can hear it directly from her. It was a joyful conversation as we reminisced, and she shared lessons she has learned from living her life based on a set of values. And I'm going to warn you, I was very excited to see her on Zoom. So you might want to turn your volume down just a little bit for our opening greeting. You'll know what I mean in a second. Christina, so great to see you after so long.
No, definitely, Shaquille. It's really great to be able to see you, even just, over the web. It's been 20 years, I believe, since I last met you.
Well, I'm really grateful that you made this time to catch up. It is really, really great to talk
awesome.
to you. And if you remember back 20 years ago, Wi-Fi was just coming out. All of a sudden, we had internet access in our classrooms. And I don't know if you remember, but we had a lot of people that were like day trading.
Yes.
Because it was the internet bubble at the same time while we had this Wi-Fi access in the middle of class. I'm sure there's some people that made a lot of money and lost a lot of money.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so different now. It's just seeing the pace of change, of the last even 5 years.
Yeah.
It's accelerated, right? 20 years ago, oh my goodness, compared to now.
Yeah.
I still remember, what we use. Oh, floppy disk.
Right.
Disk,
Yeah.
floppy disk. Yes,
Yeah.
we actually had to submit our assignment using floppy disk.
I remember that.
And now, there is no such thing.
I don't know if you remember this, but when we had our class, our IT class with Professor Newson, he said, at some point, you're all going to have like a thin kind of computer with no software, absolutely no software and no documents. You're going to have very little memory on these things. And your software is going to be sitting somewhere else.
Yeah.
And like now, that was 20 years ago. And
20 years ago,
we've
yeah.
been in this, so not that far off. So how are you and your family? And
yeah, doing good. I guess the COVID basically restrict us to pretty much like stay put. We live in Vancouver, so normally I do quite a bit of travel, but you can't do that now, right?
No.
With quarantine and just taking risks. And my folks are in the mid 80s, so they're in the high risk sort of category. So there are different things in the neighborhood that we could appreciate, and it's it's beautiful. Canada's beautiful. BC in particular, really beautiful.
Yeah.
So there are just a lot of things that I'm finding out now that we could actually enjoy locally.
If you remember our orientation week theme song when we started in 1998 was the song by REM, It's the End of the World as We Know It. Kind of interesting that 20 years later, we're going through this pandemic.
Yeah.
And it is the end of the world as we knew it.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, we've been through so many major disruptions over the last 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like, when we graduated, boom times, and then the tech bubble burst and a lot of people lost their jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And then things got better for a bit. And then you had
financial
the world
crisis.
Well, before that, you had the World Trade Center and right, 9/11. And that changed things. Supply chains were disrupted. The way we travel was changed. Mm-hmm. And then we had the 2008 financial crisis. Mm-hmm. And then we have this. And along the way, we had lots of different changes that are happening. And so I wanted to chat with you to just reflect on your last 20 years a little bit, but see what lessons we could draw from that experience that will help us over the next little while. And that's the conversation I wanted to have with you a little bit today.
Yeah, no, perfect. Just want to thank you first, right? Before we get into the reflection piece, just initiating this, right? Because, it's not easy to stay connected despite the fact that we have technology. And it's not easy to, think about, hey, let's just think backwards as to what we've learned, because we all just march through, we're always running out of time. That's good thing that you're doing. So I do want to, thank you. And I really appreciate you reaching out and doing this. So
well, thank you for
first and foremost
being so responsive, because of course, I felt a little bit vulnerable putting this call out to people, because I wasn't sure if people would be like,
who's this guy?
Who's this guy, right? At least it was nice to have a few people remember me and a few people say, yeah, let's do this. And so if we go back to, first of all, actually, if you wouldn't mind telling me what's your role right now? What are you doing?
Sure. Well, I'm a CFO of a mining contracting company in, based in BC, Vancouver, BC. Okay. And, we're not huge, we're, I would say medium to large size. So, we have close to about 700, 800 people right now, basically working on different projects all across Canada and some, international work as well. I joined this company about, I would say, close to 6 years now. So I guess this is really my first so-called executive position, in the C-suite. Yeah. Prior to that, automotive sector and then the mining sector. It's about half now. I since graduation, I joined General Motors. Okay. So I was doing a rotation and getting to know, not just the auto business, but just business in general. Right. And leadership. That helped me, inspired me, and also molded me into, a lot of what I am today and who I am today. Okay. And mining sector was basically, I joined mining sector when that financial crisis hit. So 2008, I moved back, from Detroit to Vancouver, where my family is. So for personal reason, health reasons of, my family, I moved back, made a decision to, change career and go into a complete different sector. And mining was booming at that time. So then I got into mining with Anglo American. So start reflecting on it is, less of a title matter, but think of, really what impact am I, creating, and what impact, not just on the business itself, but mostly on people,
Right.
Over time, right? On myself and over time, that I've kind of learned through. So that's a lot of things that, sort of my premise of my reflection is, sort of the impact that was created, over the last 20 years.
Yeah. So I want to dive a little bit into your career decisions that were driven by family. I would love to explore that a little bit, but if I remember correctly, you were an accountant, and what was your aspiration when you came to do your graduate degree? What was your aspiration?
I'm never really just a type of person who like to sit in a public practice world where I look at some other people's business. I want to be part of it. I want to, be in the action. So hence, I joined the MBA program at Ivey, right? And it completely widened my perspective of thinking. And because, the MBA thinking allow us to, in particular the Ivey training, allow us to think, very broadly. And then you create a network and, just even the exposure, right? I guess I started, basically doing my accountancy in Vancouver. Right. And it's a much smaller market than the East Coast. So, branching out to Ivey allows me to tap into the Eastern Canada type businesses. And obviously, General Motors is a pretty big company now. It was even a bigger company back then. Yeah. So that really allows me to, kind of grow in my career in terms of learning about businesses, just in general, not just accounting, finance, but in general, how business is being run. So
you joined General Motors after you graduated,
right?
And you joined them in a kind of accounting and finance role.
In the finance, they call it the rotation program.
Okay.
So essentially, they move you around to different departments, and because General Motors is so big, when you're part of a department, it felt for me, and in particular, I want to widen my perspective, right? So I'm not staying in like the controller, type environment. So my wide spectrum went from employment costs, dealing with labor union benefits, pension, to the design of a vehicle. I was part of a product team, and I was involved with the vehicle design. Not that I was designing the vehicle, but from the financial aspect, supporting that, working with joint venture partners. To my last stint at GM was internal audit. I was not thinking it would be fun, but in fact it opened my set of eyes to something else about internal controls, what it means to an organization. So, I think looking back now, although I, complain about it as I was going in, but, those experiences that I built up, really helped with, what I need to use today. Keeping that learning attitude is key. And I think you hear that from a lot of leaders. Yeah. You're continuously learning. You never stop learning. You can always learn something from somebody else.
Yeah, that's such an important, I'm so glad you said that, because I also agree with you. I think that's one of the key things that young people and leaders right now, it doesn't matter what level you are in your career, that constant learning and opening your mind and listening to others and learning all the time is really important.
Exactly.
Sure. And so would you say that's, just working across so many different functions and areas, what was great about it and what was really difficult about it?
Because of the rotation, maximum, we usually stay just maximum 2 years. So, and, I learned that, usually the first 6 months of, going into something new, it's the glassy eyes period. Right. But, if you succeed in getting through the 6 months, then you can start, adding value, right? So, but usually in the second year is where you accelerate. So I guess earlier on in my career, it's more about, learning the technical side of things, like pension or, labor agreement, those are complicated things. And so to, like learning about vehicle design, how to market a vehicle, how much do I know, right? So I think the technical side was something that I was putting a lot of time in learning. But one thing that I guess, and that was one advice that I got from actually a good mentor of mine that I still kept in touch with today. She was a senior finance. She in fact was the VP finance at that time of GM Canada. She told me, you got to lift your head up. Notice, I guess, and I joined as an analyst. So, you constantly put your head down. You're always on some spreadsheet, you're reading something, you're connecting with folks, but you got to lift your heads up because you need to deal with people. And
Right.
that's the side that I start to, learn that, and as you move up, not only about moving up, but if you want to be effective in the business world, unless you're just a one-man show, a one-woman show, you got to work with people.
Yeah.
So lifting your head up, start talking to folks, start listening to other people, help you, build, a better relationship and be able to, move things forward. So that's something that I guess I learned through the process.
That was a bit of a gift, I think, that advice that executive
Yes.
gave you to lift your head up. I can see as you're talking about it, it has had an impact on you.
Oh, totally. It's just what I learned is, and I learned a lot through, and I really grew through kind of learning and observing what others do. And in particular, I see that, good mentors are the one that, really show a keen interest in you.
Right.
And to see your blind spot, know you well, and be able to just really tell you in, a couple of words, what are some of these things that you need to watch out for.
Right.
And until this day, I remember. I remember I use it and I, share with other people and hope that, it will help them as well. So no, it's.
I mean, you touched on something that I believe is also very important is appreciating candor.
Yes.
Appreciating somebody that will call out something in your blind spot.
Totally.
And actually embracing it instead of cowering and protecting yourself.
Exactly. We don't have so much time in a day, like I think it's rather beating around the bush and putting flowery language around it to sell something to someone. Just be direct because, it will help that person. And it's a small world, whether you're in business or anything, like you come in contact with the same person at times, right? So it's good to be candor and show, who you are, what you're expecting. And, shorten the time to get to the point.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, really good. I mean, gosh, just in that few minutes, there's so much I picked up. You talked about learning. You talked about, yes, the analytics and learning the technical aspects of any kind of new challenge you have is really important. But as important is engaging with people, listening, observing, understanding the people dynamics, and then having people in your life that will tell you the truth without the soft language and flowery language, just tell you what you need to hear and move on so you can grow.
One thing I found is that there's a time for everything. There is really a time, I think it's part of maturity, right? All of us kind of learn through the process and it's like, hey, now I understand what this means. And now I'm willing. I think that's the part, like I'm willing to open up, to be flexible, to learn.
Yeah.
I'm willing to be humble, to acknowledge that I don't know everything.
Yeah.
I'm willing to understand that other people could be right.
Yes. Yes.
So
important.
Very important. And it's really keeping an open mind versus just being critical, which is another, good trait of an accountant.
Yeah.
Growing from auditor, I know everything, like there's a book that I go by, you're wrong, let me show you. That attitude, as you go through business, you need to change because you can't always, and as you know, right, if you work with people that always tell you you're wrong, you don't want to deal with this person.
Right.
So how could you create an impact or a change, So that's also what I learned that, you need to really be humble as a leader, listen and listen, before you open your mouth.
I've never quite actually met an accountant like you, Christina, because I mean the insight you're bringing to a very technical profession, I can totally understand why you've risen to the C-level in your current role, because I think the approach I'm hearing from you is unique in your profession.
I'm still struggling, every day as well, right, to establish what my role is supposed to be. I am in the mining world, so and automotive, so you can see, there's a lot of stereotyping there, and constantly there are people who try to put you in a shoebox and go, this is your role. Ethics. As long as you hold fast on a number of these things, then you can pivot even just the whole accountancy, I think, as a whole profession is starting to change as well, right? I think the old mentality, stereotype that, you're just an auditor.
Right.
To now, I think CPA is doing a fine job in, basically reshaping, what a professional, accountant who carries a CPA means.
Right.
It's not just someone you go to for tax advice or, just to get a signature on your auditor statement so that you say, I am compliant.
Right.
But, they offer great insights. And I think, the education side of things in terms of the training also start to change. Yeah. But a lot of these things, as with any profession, whether it's engineer or architect or whoever, I think it's just part of us maturing and you need that experience. Yeah. That experience comes through, dealing with people. And one word I want to introduce as well, and I'm sure you heard that before, in dealing with constant changes, you need to make sure that you learn how to pivot.
Yeah.
Right. So you can't stay constant, but you need to hold fast on, certain, things that are constant, like your values, right? To create an influence.
Yeah, I love what you said about pivot. I talk a lot about pivoting, and the analogy I have, the first time I ever heard the word pivoting was when I was on the high school basketball team, and we had a coach that taught us about pivoting, right? You plant one foot down in an area of strength, and then you scan the environment to see what else you could do and what other options are. And I think it's a perfect analogy for this time. In fact, for all times. Because there are people that I'm sure you've come across, I've come across, when things don't turn out the way they had planned or expected, they freeze.
Yeah, I know.
Right? Or they end up getting in a lot of conflict with the people around them because things are not turning out the way they wanted it. Versus the person that pivots and says, okay, well, let's learn from this. And
it's very rare occasion that you get everything right. Then that is the case where you win a lottery because you guess all 6 numbers right. But other than that, any forecast means it's a guess, right?
Yeah.
You just have to, continue to pivot to make sure that you reach the expectation.
Yeah.
Right.
Touched on something where you made some major career decisions because of your family and your parents. And I went through something similar. I'd love to hear your story about kind of what thought process you went through and what was going on in the family at the time that you made that change.
Sure. It was actually 2007, if I remember exactly. My last role at General Motors, I was an internal audit. And in fact, I wasn't just working in Detroit. I was basically dispatched out to Asia. So that was sort of, my opportunity to actually branch out for international business. And that was what was happening. Just getting to network and get to see, the other divisions to pave my way out. But also
it was
at
a high
that time,
point. It was a high point in your career.
It was a high point.
Okay.
Exactly. It was a high point. But my dad had some heart problems at that time, and when he came, visit me back in 2007, he basically, blacked out one day.
Oh,
and
wow.
then, he had to go through a bunch of tests and leading to the fact that, he need to get a bypass.
Right.
The triple bypass. So, it was at that time, I went back to Detroit already. So I was like thinking, okay, what should I do there? And it was close to 2008, late 2007. And I came back, home for 6 weeks to, basically take care of them, or just be there for my folks. And during these 6 weeks, I still have, a lot of really good friends that I grew up with here in Vancouver. And one in particular, he already, has a successful career here, asked me, why don't you just, send your resume out and just see what happens.
Yeah.
So I did. Door just opened, and then I got an offer within a week. And essentially, went back to Detroit and ended in my resignation and go bye.
Wow.
I'm moving. And it was, if you remember, like GM went through a big crisis back in 2008. So it was right before, right after I left, actually. I didn't really hear anything while I was still there. And I, came back. And then all of a sudden they went through, a lot of the Chapter 11 type things.
Right.
So a lot of changes. So if I would have stayed, then, I think it would be a very difficult time.
Right.
Who knows what would have happened, right?
Right.
So I guess my decision back then, it was very difficult, but at the same time, I'm a Christian, so
Yeah.
I pray about these things
Yeah.
and talk to friends and talk to family as well, and I knew I have to choose,
Right.
right, career or
Right.
uh, or basically family, right,
Yeah.
and I chose family,
Yeah.
and was it a difficult decision? Yes, it was a difficult decision, but career, you can always build somewhere else and do something else. General Motors is not the only company. It was great
Right.
for to me, but it's not the only company.
Yeah.
So yeah, but family, I only have one.
Yeah.
so
I
so
love
I
it.
chose family, came back, and it took me a while actually to really convince myself that I made the right decision, to be honest,
Yeah.
because also as part of growing up and
Yeah.
being matured as well, as I always look at other people.
Yeah. Sure.
Compare,
Yeah.
those are very dangerous things to do.
Yeah.
So I kick myself at times. I was like, oh, if I've done this and that, I would be here now. But at the end of the day, now looking back, it's been 12 years since I moved back here. It's done great to me. It's
Yeah.
done great to my family. My
Yeah.
dad survived. My parents are like pretty good, health wise, and emotionally stable as well. So I do thank God for that, and I'm very grateful for the
Yeah.
opportunities given. And so yeah, I no regret.
It really does speak to living your life and your career um, based on a set of values, right?
Yes.
In your case, there's family values and Christian values, but it's living your life based on some kind of value system that helps you during these times where there's difficult choices to make.
Totally. And I'm a human too. You tend
Yeah.
to go back and reflect and kick yourself and so forth. But at the end of the day, and that's something I think I remember learning at Ivey, you
Yeah.
gotta, the most important thing is to make a decision,
Right.
right? And move
Right.
on.
Move on.
So, and that's what I keep reminding myself. You make your
Yeah.
decision, don't look back, move on.
Move on. I know. So, and we hear so much of it now. I'm sure you do as well. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and one of the standard things about leading in crisis mode is just do something, make a move. And I
Yeah.
think that's absolutely right. Is keep moving forward is a really important recognition.
Mm-hmm.
It's so interesting the experience you just talked about, making decisions based on family and the reflection. I went through something almost exactly the same, and it was it was a situation where my mom passed away suddenly, unexpectedly.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
No, thank you. It was years ago now, but
Mm.
at the time, I remember my wife and I were flying back with the kids, young kids at the time, flying to Vancouver for the funeral. And I
Mm.
remember saying to her that I think it's time. I think it's time we get
Mm.
back home. And there's
Mm.
something just drawing me there. And I had always been focused on my career, management
Right.
consulting, and then senior management at Pure later. I loved my job at
That's
Pure
right.
later. I really
Yeah, you were doing really
enjoyed it.
well.
But then something clicked that said, family is really important, and our kids need to grow up with their family around them. And
Mm.
my dad's going to need support now that my mom is gone.
Right. Right.
And it's funny once I put that out there, as difficult as it was, everything kind of fell in place.
Uh-huh.
An amazing promotion opportunity opened up with Pure
Right.
later in Vancouver.
Right.
And the company came to me and said, hey, we have this opportunity here in
Right.
Vancouver. I know you have family in Vancouver. Would you be interested? And I was like, are
Right.
you kidding me? So I got
Yeah.
a promotion, moved to Vancouver. Everything was great. I was there to support my dad. It turns then out that my father-in-law got very sick and then passed away from
Ah,
that. But my wife was able to be there by his side. And
yeah.
my
Yeah.
dad ended up getting cancer, and I was there to support him through
Ah,
that. He's doing great now.
okay.
But
Okay.
when you make your decisions based on values, things just have a way
Yes.
of unfolding for you.
That is very true. That is very true. And I think, that's a perspective that we kind of, learn, as we grow up in life.
Yeah.
What are the true values, like, materialistic things, money and fame and everything, they don't last.
Right.
And, is it just a few more likes, on the internet that gives you, the boost, or is there something else?
Yeah.
I think, no, those are, really good experience that you just shared there, but that's really it. It's not the end. You think it's the end? You think you can predict everything? We can't, so just give it a shot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's wonderful. I'm going to ask you one last question before we wrap up today. A big part of kind of being in leadership is kind of a daily, you talked about learning. Do you have a daily practice of reflection on the things you're learning or experiencing?
Recently joined, over the last, I would say 8 to 9 months. It's a sort of, executive coaching plus sort of executive, small group sharing type, support group type forum. And, we do meet, if not once a month, every other month. So, that forum allows us to share, some of our, they call it big rocks. Yeah. So that's a point where we, get to reflect as well. Yeah. Right. So just what are some of these biggest gaps that we need to, resolve? So
so you have to reflect yourself in order to be able to share in these
correct.
Right.
Exactly.
So when you're doing that reflection to prepare for these meetings, where are you typically? Are you doing this in the car? Are you doing it when you walk? Where are you when you're doing it?
I'm doing it in my basement. That's where I work
these days.
So exactly where I work these days. So essentially, my thing is I need to basically sit still and create for myself a quiet moment, a space, where I could, and I write these things down. Right. So, it's not just a thought that just, came through. But usually, that's how I, usually get the most out of it.
You write it down. I think that's such an important practice, is to think about it. Doesn't matter where you think about it. It could be while you're on the treadmill, in the woods, or in your basement. Right. But the key for you is actually, putting down on paper and
putting down on paper. And, I carry a little, professional development book with me, and I get to flip back, right? What was my problem, 2 months ago? Yeah. Did I, improve on that, or is it still a problem?
So, that's good.
Yeah, so that's helpful for me. Wouldn't say, that I have done, super well in a lot of them. So, it takes time to kind of, overcome, certain trials as well, right? So.
But you do look back. I guess you do look back and say, what did I want to learn then? Did I do it? How did it go? Yeah. What's the next level? That kind of thing.
Exactly. And, with COVID times as well, right? You constantly are learning, and the government, everybody's trying to figure out. Yeah. So you do need to kind of, sit back and reflect it as well. How did we do it? March, how did we react to this? Yeah. Up to this point, did we do well? Did we not? And are there gaps that we still need to fill? Because yes, winter is coming. Yeah. How are you going to prepare yourself, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I really enjoyed this conversation, Christina.
Oh, thank you, Shakil. Yeah, same here.
Taking the time and for sharing some pretty deep thoughts and being pretty open about some of your personal experiences. I think that what you've shared today is going to be very valuable for a lot of people. I do hope some new grads listen to it, as well as some of our people that graduated around the same time listen to it. And I look forward to staying in touch with you, Christina. I'm very grateful.
No, same here.
We were together 20 years ago, but we were able to kind of somehow, even though we hadn't talked in 20 years, still come back and connect at a very deep level. And I'm grateful for that. Thank you.
No, thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much, Shakil, for all this.
So here's the wisdom I picked up from Christina. First, be open to new challenges. Immerse yourself in the technical details of your new project. At first, you will be overwhelmed for sure, but at some point, you will start to add value. Second, never lose sight of the importance of relationships and the perspectives of other people. Listen with humility. Third, make your decisions based on a set of values. And if you practice a faith, lean on that faith during times of tough decisions. Family first. With that, you can never go wrong. And finally, find a support system of people you trust and take the time to reflect on a regular basis. Write down your reflections and look back at them from time to time. I hope that was helpful for you, and I hope you continue to listen. At some point, I'll be introducing another interview with another one of my classmates. Have a great day. Thank you for tuning in. If you liked this episode, please do rate or leave a review. It'll help others like you find this show. See you next time.